What's up? I decided I'd get myself into some Dark Souls challenge runs after seeing some floating around on the web, and I wanted to ease myself into it, but this challenge ended up being a lot harder than I previously thought, and you'll see why. Originally, the title, Can You Beat Dark Souls with Only Dragon Weapons, kinda sounds like a bit of a cheat, but trust me, this was way harder than I thought it would have been. Before we begin though, let's go over some rules for this run. Firstly, I'm not allowed to use any other weapons at all, including magic, pyromancy, and miracles. I can use any shield that I want minus the Dark Hand because it has the ability to attack and steal humanity. As well as this, I can't have any side weapons, however, I can use any armor set I want. Secondly, I can't kill any bosses until I have a dragon weapon, which means that I can't make any major progression unless I have a dragon weapon. Third, the challenge starts after I leave the asylum, meaning that I can obviously kill the asylum demon. And 4, this is an all bosses run, meaning I have to kill every single boss in the game in this run. So without further ado, let's jump right in.
We start by making my character and choosing the Knight class because of the good starting armor and balanced stats. We name him Challenge, I know, very creative. I'll also choose the Dragon Scholar as it's fitting for this run, and the Master Key. We wake up in the asylum and strip off some armor to help with rolling. I would have chosen the Bandit, but it just didn't cross my mind. Moving through, we grab our weapons and we kill the asylum demon in normal Dark Souls fashion, and this is when the challenge really starts. I run through the Undead Burg and grab a bonfire on my way there and head down to Havel. I begin poking him profusely in the back until he submits, and I get one of the rings I'll have to use for this run. His ring boosts my maximum equip load for this run, and that's really good. After killing Havel, we run through the shortcut to get to the Undead Parish, and luckily there's a bow on the way, which will be important in a second. After getting here, we need to backtrack a little more in order to get to the bridge, kick down the ladder, and now we can grab our first dragon weapon. If we aim here, we can shoot enough times, and we get the Greatsword. On the surface, this weapon seems amazing, and this is the weakest of all the dragon weapons. And the thing about dragon weapons is that they may hit like a freight train, but are extremely heavy and take extremely long to attack and are also very vulnerable. They're very weak structurally, which means they break extremely easily, and in Dark Souls 1, when weapons lose durability, they begin to lose damage. And it doesn't help that your heavy attack takes off 50 durability every time you use it, even though it may be extremely powerful. But anyways, now that we have a dragon weapon, we can start taking out some bosses. The first boss on our hit list is the Taurus demon. Climb up the ladder, take out these archer guys, and go to bait him out. He falls almost without a hassle. I definitely did not almost die right here, and he gives us 3,000 souls, which allows us to level up quite a bit. I decided I'd also open up the door to the lower Undead Burg with the key that I picked up when I was in Undead Parish. And speaking of which, I need to head back there to grab the Grass Crest shield, which I forgot when I went through there originally. After this, I run back to Andre so I can repair my sword after previous events, and I can also level up here. I'm dumping a bunch of points into strength so I can wield the dragon weapons coming up. I think this is a great time to go fight the gargoyles so I can go into the church, grab a Firekeeper soul, and up to the rooftops where the gargoyles are waiting for me. I do more than enough damage for this boss fight. I almost get taken out by the first one, but ultimately I came out on top, and the second one is just a matter of waiting until he shoots fire and then attacking him. With this boss fight, we get 12,000 souls, which should allow us to level up quite a bit, and with that, we have the first Bell of Awakening rung. I decided to go back to Firelink Shrine so that I can level up. I also kill Lortrek for his ring, which boosts my equip load, health, and stamina, so now we have the 2 main rings we'll be using for this run. These 2 rings are incredible, and they're used in most runs that aren't just sorcery, and I actually was looking at some other rings to do it, but these 2 just seem the best. After that, I use the Firekeeper soul to level up my Estus flask. I feel like now is a great time to pick up the main weapon I'll be using this run, the Dragon Greatsword. If you don't know, out of the 5, this one is the most powerful, but also extremely heavy. We use the shortcut to Blighttown because I will actually kill myself if I had to go through it normally, and descend. I go through the tree and descend into the Great Hollow, which definitely did not take a bunch of tries, and mosey on through Curse Gas into Ash Lake where I didn't grab a bonfire. Fuck! This is definitely one of my favorite areas in the entire game. It's really important to the lore of the game, and it just looks really pretty. But unfortunately, there's a Hydra here, which will make it way harder to get where we need to go. I run as fast as I can over to the other side of the island and get to the everlasting dragon. While I'm on my way, I also grab some dragon scales, which allow me to upgrade my weapons. When I finally make it to the everlasting dragon, I join the Covenant and cut off his tail to get the dragon greatsword, but unfortunately, I'm not even close to being able to wield it in 2 hands. Fuck it, it's fine. I need 50 strength to be able to hold it with 1 hand, but only 34 to hold it in 2, which will take less time. And luckily, I can go to kill Quelaag and Ceaseless Discharge to get 40,000 souls, but there's one downside. I have to leave here without warping, so I might as well go for it. After a long time in a broken piece of terrain that I needed to look up in a tutorial how to avoid, I'm finally out, and I can go to face Quelaag. My damage is starting to drop dramatically, and I'll have to change this eventually, but nevertheless, after a few tries, I beat Quelaag and ring the second Bell of Awakening. Next up, I go to kill Ceaseless. I do the thing that all people do to end the boss fight early, which is bait him to the cliff and hit his hand till we have a shit ton of souls now, which means we can finally get closer to being able to use the weapon, and now we're finally able to climb our way out of Firelink Shrine. Guys, there's something I need to tell you. My MacBook died while recording this video, and I wasn't able to get footage of me fighting the gaping dragon or going through the sewers. I can't apologize enough. Oh, fuck! Here it is in my inventory, so it doesn't matter. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention that my endurance is high enough to wear a new piece of armor now. Anyways, we make our way to the Dark Root Garden to grab the elite armor, and we're off to Sen's fortress. This area can either be really easy to get through or extremely hard, and luckily for us, it's just a quick stroll through. I make it to the bonfire above and go kill the giant throwing firebombs, and finally, we're at the biggest hurdle in our journey so far. The giant golem. He isn't too hard on normal runs because he doesn't do much damage, and yep, but not to worry, if we hit him enough times, he'll begin to stagger. And if you keep hitting him, he'll fall backwards, and there's a chance he can fall off the fortress, making it an easy fight. It takes us a few tries, but eventually he falls. Now we finally made it to Anor Londo. Like most areas in Dark Souls, Anor Londo can either be a normal area or an extremely difficult one to get through, and at this point in the run, I only need 2 more strength to be able to wield the Dragon Greatsword, so we all know what that means. Farming until I have enough for 4 levels because I'd rather die than have to fight Ornstein and Smough with this weapon. It's a fucking toothpick. So I decide to get the bonfire in the main castle living area. I kill the Oh my god! I kill the lightning gargoyle and go up to the rafters. I was dreading the thought of them, but they were actually really easy this time around for some reason. We make it across in 1 try and activate the big spinny thing, and in we go to the castle. The Silver Knight gives us a bunch of trouble, but then on the second try I do this bullshit, and he inevitably falls off the side of the building, giving us the bonfire in the room. Before I do anything, I grab Havel's armor, which will be my tank armor if I need it, mainly for the Nito fight. Now I think this is a great time to start farming because there's Silver Knights all around and the giant's right outside of Ornstein and Smough's arena. To get to that area, I do this exploit and try to take on one of the Titanite demons and freak the fuck out when I realize my sword does absolutely nothing to it. And just like that, after a few runs of grabbing souls, we're finally able to wield the sword. Look at it! It's so big and beautiful. Everything else aside, this is a huge upgrade, and if you've noticed, I've been grabbing dragon scales as I go through areas, which means I can upgrade the weapon even further. But I can't do that yet because it costs 10,000 souls just to upgrade it once, but that's fine right now because this thing hits like a freight train and takes out Silver Knights in only 2 hits. However, the downside is, at least in this point in the run, I mid-roll without even any armor, which is bad. But it doesn't help that it's one of the slowest swinging weapons in the entire game, and it has less range than the Zweihander, and swings a slight bit slower. With all this, you'd think that this weapon is terrible, but you couldn't be more wrong, and you'll see why when we fight Ornstein and Smough, which, speaking of them, I think I'm ready for them now. We mosey on down to the arena, and I prepare myself for a fight that could be either extremely difficult or extremely easy. Ornstein moves extremely fast, and I don't, which means I have to be extremely careful for when I attack. At this rate, I'd rather do less damage and move quickly because at least I can get more hits on. After a few times of dying, I decide to kindle the bonfire so that I have more of a chance to heal, and also so that I can stay alive longer. This run starts off pretty good. Ornstein goes down and Smough evolves. Honestly, this part of the fight was extremely easy because Smough staggers after only 2 hits, so we bully him until he goes down, earning us the Lord Vessel. This part in the fight as well has us only fighting Smough, who is about as slow as I am. He can't really charge me as quickly, and I can also just bully him, but I mean, hey. We get 50,000 souls, so I'm going to start upgrading endurance and vitality because I'm definitely lacking with those stats. And using the soul of Smough, I can upgrade my sword even further. We place the Lord Vessel. Also, I apologize for how oversaturated everything looks in this part. I don't know, my capture card, I guess, fucked up when I was on my TV, which is only HD, versus the living room TV, which is 4K. So then the settings kind of messed up a little bit, and so this part just looks really, really bad, but it's not the rest of the video. Please do not kill me. Don't click off. It's okay.
Now we're in the late game, and I really don't want to go out and fight the last 4 bosses yet. I also have some optional bosses I haven't taken down yet, so it's time to go out and kill some bosses. I go back to the asylum for 2 reasons, so I can get the peculiar doll and kill the stray demon. The stray demon surprisingly gives me a lot of trouble. This is because the dragon greatsword is one of the heaviest weapons in the entire game, and against the stray demon, mid-rolling is not preferred. He can change up his attacks super quick, and he has the stupid fucking AoE that charges up way too fast. Besides that though, I press on and win the fight. I'm feeling pretty good at this point, so I decide to head back to Anor Londo so I can make my way to the Duke's archive. Not to fight Smough though. I'm going so I can kill the golem that gives me the broken pendant so I can play the DLC. This is where I have to rant for a second. As much as I love how Dark Souls 1 is specifically structured, I have issues with the warping mechanic. Dark Souls 1 is essentially stacked on top of itself. All the areas lead back to one another in some way, which is really cool. It makes you feel like you're actually traversing through a real world where everything is interconnected. Past a certain point though, everything is so far away from one another that it gets hard to travel all the way back to Firelink or any other early area. This is where the warping mechanic comes in. Every other Souls game is set up where every bonfire is connected, which can also be really sick, but I don't like this as much because it doesn't really feel like the area is connected. This in turn makes it less fun to travel and traverse areas. But I can't stand how when you do get the warp function, you can't actually warp to every bonfire. For example, there's a bonfire in Undead Burg, which you can't travel to because it's just not included on the list. I feel like there's a mod that fixed this, but I'm playing on console because it looks nice, even though Dark Souls Remastered is a really, really buggy mess, which we will get to soon, don't you worry. In practice, though, it makes you go through areas you've already gone through a million times over just to get a bonfire that, surprise, surprise, you can't warp to. It's small, I know, but it was annoying enough that throughout the entirety of the video, I had to have to say something about it. Anyways, after we get the silver pendant, we have to travel back even more to get back to Darkroot Garden, where we free Dusk, reload, and get whisked away by the hand. This fucking DLC broke me. Usually I'm fine to go through the DLC, but the slow movement strikes again here. You can see here that the Sanctuary Guardian is super fast and recovers too fast to get any attacks off. This is extremely annoying and by far the hardest fight in the game I've gone through so far, but we'll return back to that. I hate this stupid fucking boss, but I press on. I can't even tell you how many times I got so close to beating it and a small lightning particle would tickle me and I died. I was so happy that I killed it and it was finally over. My celebration eventually turned into tears, however, when I learned that I now had to go against Artorias. But nonetheless, I consume the soul of the Guardian so I can get some extra souls for leveling, and I go to activate the shortcut to the Artorias fight because I would rather kill myself than have to go the long way, and we're off. I may have been able to beat the Guardian with all this armor, but Artorias is way too hard. With that, I decided to strip down to having no armor. Luckily, this is enough to fast roll, so it's worth it. After a bunch of dying, I decide that maybe Artorias is a bit too powerful for right now, and I decide to go try at Smough. Going back through the Duke's archive, we get killed by Smough and get locked up. After some exploring, I find the main bonfire and off to the Crystal Caves we go. I'm mainly giving a synopsis on this because it went by way slower, and I don't think any of you want to really hear about that. The Crystal Caves are usually annoying to get through, but the one saving grace about it is that it looks absolutely gorgeous. I also forgot that it has invisible bridges, which are a bitch to get through if you haven't played for a while and you just don't know where they are. When we get to Smough, my weapon by now does a shit ton of damage, and we beat him even second try. I need some more souls and dragon scales, so I decided to go kill the hydras, mainly the ones located in Ash Lake and Darkroot Garden. We need to upgrade our weapon a bit more before we do anything else. After this, I travel back to the Darkroot Basin to grab some Eastern armor because it's light and offers really, really good defense. I'm feeling pretty good with my stats, so I decided to go kill Sif, and I forgot about him, so yeah. I'll let this clip explain itself because I'm really powerful, and yeah. After bullying Sif into submission, I finally decide that I'm ready to go face Artorias again. I once again strip down naked and go back to Artorias. Our damage is really, really good now, so it only takes a little persistence and I finally take him down. I was genuinely considering using tanky armor, but luckily I was able to get through it. On the last little bit, I couldn't even heal because he would just come up and attack me. So there were a couple parts where if I didn't heal at that part, I probably would have died, but after trying to get a heal off a couple times, I just couldn't. Artorias is hard for any build, mainly because he's just essentially the Ornstein and Smough fight, but mixed together. He moves as fast as Ornstein, but he has as much health and tankiness as Smough, which is a horrible, horrible mix. I decided that it was finally time to go back to the catacombs to kill Nito. Go through the graveyard and down the catacombs where we kill Pinwheel. This is probably the saddest fight in the whole video, and I don't think I could explain why, so I'll just show this. Anyways, after bullying Pinwheel, we go down to the Tomb of the Giants to kill Nito. The Tomb of the Giants is one of the harder areas to get through, and if you don't see why, let me show you. You can't see. I was surprised how quickly I made it through the area. This is where Havel's armor comes into play since it's the most effective way of fighting Nito. He has too many AoEs and skeletons helping him to really go into it. I didn't even know when I first played Dark Souls that you could block this attack with your shield. Like, you can just straight up block it and it does less damage. But anyways, we beat him second try after trying this strategy. At this point, I'm in a weird spot because I was dreading the thought of having to fight the Bed of Chaos. I hated the thought so much that I actually decided I'd rather go fight the dragon in the Valley of Drakes for more scales. I've never beaten this enemy before, but this fight was surprisingly easy if you know what you're doing. You just bait his weird poison attack and move out of range so you can easily chip off its health. Or in my case, just kind of like donk it a few times and you'll be fine. I finally built up the courage to go fight the Bed of Chaos after I slept on it, but oh, don't worry, this won't be the first time in this challenge where that happened. I go through Lost Izalith and grab this bonfire so I can warp out if need be and go to kill the Demon Fire Sage. This fight wasn't super hard, but it was still annoying. Demon Fire Sage is just a reskin of the Stray Demon, which is a more advanced reskin of the Asylum Demon, so you can imagine how it went. Annoyingly large AoEs that are super hard to gauge distance from, fast recovery speed, and an absolute tank. After we take care of him, we move on to the Centipede Demon boss fight that also has all these problems, minus the annoying AoE, but he makes up for it with this stupid spin attack. And also this giant lake of lava that's kind of just around that you have to cut off its tail, which gives you a special lava charm ring, which allows you to walk on lava and only take a little bit of health every couple seconds, or not even every couple seconds, every millisecond. After this, we can finally make it to the Bed of Chaos. Now, I have to say something about the Bed of Chaos, and this part has no script, like, at all. I hate this boss fight. It's already been talked to death by so many other YouTubers that are far more qualified than I am, but I just need to get this off my chest. The Bed of Chaos is the perfect example of why the late game in Dark Souls 1 is so bad. Unlike any other Dark Souls game, or any other Souls game for that matter, where all the late games are super fun because it's like you feel like you're going on this mission. And in Dark Souls Remastered, that's true for the first little bit. And then after you try to replay it, and after you try to go back through it, it's so annoying and tedious to get through because there are so many areas that are just hidden in other areas that you have to go back to. And if you haven't unlocked all the bosses already, it's just like you have to go in and fight a couple bosses before then you can make it to a main boss that's not really like super interesting to fight and more kind of just bullshit. Seath has this disgusting Seath is probably my favorite of the three to fight. Gravelord Nito, however, is my favorite boss of the three. When it comes to Seath, the only annoying attack that he has is this big crystal AoE that, if you're not careful, can crystallize you and take off some of your health permanently unless you go all the way back to Undead Parish just to get a charm that allows you to take off the curse. It's so dumb. And it's also insta-kill. Or in the Nito fight, where all these skeletons swarm you and he has this big AoE, and so the only way of fighting him feels cheap. You have to basically cheat at every single one of these bosses just to get through some bullshit that shouldn't even be in the game in the first place. And the Bed of Chaos is the worst example of all this. It's a parkour boss in a Souls game. There's no jump mechanic besides when you start running and you hit whatever button you have it assigned to and you jump and roll afterwards. So it's not a very calculated jump. It's kind of like the Crash Bandicoot 1 jump. You don't know where you're going to land, and it's hard to tell even if you are going to make the shot or you're just going to overshoot it. This is my issue with the late game in Dark Souls, but anyways, that rant's over. I fucking hate this boss. I tried at this boss fight for hours and eventually gave up and decided I'd try to go back and fight Manus. So back to Ulasil we go. I make it through the area after a bunch of tries because these guys do way too much damage, and I make my way to the Abyss. Also while grabbing the silver pendant while I'm at it. Spoiler alert, I gave up on Manus. This boss fight is objectively one of the hardest boss fights in the game. It depends on your build, but it's usually pretty hard for anybody. This fight is essentially almost impossible without the silver pendant because it has this huge homing dark beat attack that can one-shot you no matter how much health or defense you're at, so that's really fun. I gave up and decided to do something else because of how hard it was. I remembered that I still have to kill Gwendolyn and Priscilla, so I decided to do that. I go back to Anor Londo, shoot Guinevere, and go to the tomb where Gwendolyn resides. This boss fight was incredibly easy. The only downside about this fight was the fact that I attacked so slow that they were able to disappear before I could get an attack off. But besides that, it went pretty quick. While I'm here, I go to get abducted by a painting and disappear to the painted world of Ariamis. This area isn't usually too bad, so I find my way to the basement and open up the door to the fight. I actually never remember where the crank is, so I usually kind of just wander around the area till I find it again. I have a pretty good idea now, but I also didn't go through the painted world of Ariamis much, so I'm kind of new to this area. As per usual, Priscilla doesn't really go down with that much of a fight. Her only real mechanic is that she can turn invisible, but with our sword we can easily knock her out of it, or just tank it. Her bleed is kind of annoying, but I didn't really have an issue with it. I beat her first try. Going back to Firelink, I knew I've been putting it off. I had to go fight the Bed of Chaos, and I decided to go face it again. This time around, I'm actually able to kill it first try, which was super surprising. I don't know, maybe I was just tired that day, even though it was in the afternoon. Maybe it was my chair. I think it was because the controller batteries were dead. However, my celebration once again turned to tears. Not because I had to go fight Manus, not because I was so close to finishing the game. It was mainly that. I also had to go fight the Four Kings, but I was putting them off for a little while. Because I literally cannot stand New Londo. I was so close to finishing the game. When I traveled back to Firelink Shrine, I got this gut-wrenching message. You remember the whole thing that was all about, like, how Dark Souls Remastered is really buggy and was optimized really badly, and how, you know, the original game is a lot better, just with everything, even the network, because playing co-op in this game feels like medieval ball torture. I lost everything. My saves were corrupted. This had never happened to me before. And when I closed out to check, I lost everything. I was so pissed because not only did it delete this run, it deleted literally every single one of my other saves. And there's no way to save a corrupted game because it's corrupted. So basically, I guess it was just the Bed of Chaos decided to be more of a prick and completely delete all of my saves. This is why I didn't want to do this video originally, but I just decided that I'd release it because even though we were only a couple bosses away, I feel like it's pretty conclusive. I mean, everything else would have kind of just been, go here and fight this boss, level up. I don't have any other items that I need to grab. So I was only 2 bosses away from finishing the game, and as much as it pains me that I can't show you me finishing the game because I didn't do it, I feel like it's conclusive. I'm very sorry to all of you watching this video. I wasn't super sure how to end this video off as I wasn't able to beat the game to begin with, but I still persisted and uploaded this video. If you made it to this point, thank you so much for watching my video. I'm experimenting with a bunch of video styles, and the last video I uploaded got a lot of impressions, so I'm trying a lot harder with this video. I decided that I'd come back to YouTube, even though I didn't really leave permanently. I've just been putting it off, and I finally got this video done, so I'm really happy about that. And you guys can check out some of my other videos, even though they're not very good. And I hope wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day or a good night, and I hope to see you in another video. Later.